Hello, friends, and welcome back to Tutti Talks. I'm your host, Aveline Schinke, joined by my co-hosts, Mike Ring and Tim McDonald. Today, we're excited to welcome Justin Sarns, band director at Mona Shores High School and director of the Allendale Jazz Orchestra. Justin has taught music at all levels, from elementary to college, and also teaches jazz methods at Grand Valley State University. We'll be talking with Justin about his musical journey, his teaching experiences, and the moments that have shaped him as both a performer and educator. Justin, welcome to Tutti Talks. We are so glad to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. First off, I just want to jump right in, and could you tell us a little bit about your music background, how you got started with music, where you got your degrees from, just all of those types of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a graduate of Traverse City West High School back in 2008, and I was lucky to have two absolutely fantastic band directors through my middle school and high school journey. And those two really kind of set me on this path. Pat Brumbaugh and Flournoy Humphreys were both just masters of their craft, great teachers, and we played some unbelievably challenging music for the age that we were at the time. Originally planned to come to Grand Valley as a pre-med major. Knew I wanted to be a music teacher in 8th grade, but through a whole lot of different things, ended up deciding that I was going to try and go into the medical field. That lasted 3 weeks, I think, until I realized, what on earth am I doing? I was in marching band at that time, signed up to start taking lessons, joined concert band, auditioned into the saxophone studio that May, and started my music ed journey here. Was here for 5 years total. Graduated in 2013 with a bachelor's of music education. From there, I taught for 1 year at a charter school out in Muskegon, and then was hired at Mona Shores in 2014, where I taught elementary music and now middle and high school band.
So you just mentioned that you taught elementary and middle school. So how was your career developing over that time? How did you make the switch from elementary to middle and high school?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So when I graduated, the job market was atrocious. There were 14 of us in my class, if I remember correctly, and 3 or 4 of them didn't even get a job the first year out. So I approached that as, I need to prepare myself to teach anything and everything. Even though I wanted to be a band director, I just wanted to have a job. So I worked really hard in elementary methods, had a fantastic experience doing my teacher assisting in Allendale with Dan DeZwan. And the first job that I happened to land on was elementary. And I went, all right, I need to pay the bills, so this is what I'm doing. And I'm a firm believer that whatever you do to the absolute best of your ability. So I threw everything I had into it and absolutely loved it. I did it for 5 years, 1 year at that charter school, and then 4 years at Mona Shores. And during that time, I started an elementary choir program, which by the time I moved to the secondary level, we had between the 4 buildings close to 300 students involved in. We recorded albums and just did as many different fun things as we could to make music at that level. All while I was still working with the marching band at the Mona Shores. I was still, running AJO, that's the Allendale Jazz Orchestra, and, preparing things so that I could move to the secondary level. I got very, very lucky, and the person who was in my current position left to go get their doctorate at UT Austin, and I was able to move while staying in my same district from elementary to secondary. And the funny part about that is actually the day I found out that position was opening, I was walking into our head director's office to say, hey, I'm not going to do marching band anymore. I need to take a step back so I can just focus on elementary. And before I could get the words out of my mouth, he told me that my predecessor was leaving, and here we are now.
Wow.
Now that we've kind of talked about that, can you talk a little bit about some of the mentors that have helped shape you and have kind of guided your journey to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. There's several people that really, really come to mind. One, as I mentioned, was Dan DeZwan. He really opened my eyes to how fun teaching elementary can be and the amazing music that you can make with young students. And I really enjoyed that. Dr. John Martin here at GVSU, I was actually the first drum major that he picked. He came to the university my sophomore year, and he and I have been very, very close ever since. He's been a tremendous influence on me. Dr. Kevin Tutt, who at the time was the assistant band or director of bands here and assistant department chair, he directed the concert band, which I was in, and I learned an absolute ton from him. And then I've been really blessed to have great colleagues along the way who've kind of taught me more and more every day.
Yeah, and From all of those colleagues and experiences, is there one piece of advice or a story from a mentor that has stuck with you after all these years?
There's a couple that come to mind. One specific to education. When I was doing my student teaching at Wyoming, there was one day that the kids were just being teenagers. They were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and it was a really tough day. And I remember talking to my mentor teacher at that time, Sean Girk, and he looked at me and said, Justin, they're just kids. No matter what they do, no matter what crazy things they do, they're just kids. And that has really resonated with me over the years, that even, it's really easy for us as band directors and music educators to project frustration onto students and to kind of look at their behavior sometimes and go, why on earth are they doing it? Well, they're doing it because they're kids. They don't know better yet. And it's our job to teach them and help them to become better. So that one's really, really stuck with me. And then the other piece of advice, and this is just kind of observation based, our profession is very small. Everyone knows everyone. Don't say bad things about people, because it will get back to them in that their profession is just too interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
I myself am going into my third year in music education, and as I start to look forward to, going out into the real world, what are some steps that I should be focusing on to kind of make my first year of teaching more of a success?
Yeah. First thing I will say is, no matter how prepared you think you are, you won't be. And I don't say that to be negative. It's just no amount of education can prepare you for the things that are going to happen, whether that be the ridiculous things or the hard things. As a ridiculous thing, I've been teaching this is my 13th year? Yeah, this is my 13th year. So I had to think about that for a second. And at band camp this year, in the middle of rehearsal, one of my trombone players looked at my trombone instructor and said, hey, can I ask you a weird thing? He said, sure, what's up? And she just starts ripping her pants off and hands them to him. She had shorts on underneath, but again, nothing in school is going to prepare you for sitting there going, what just happened? And I have stories like that go very, very deep. I mean, all the time, you just look at things and go, what is happening? And then there's the tough moments that nothing anyone can say to you can help. You just navigate through them. But get into a classroom. Find every excuse you can. Volunteer your time and just watch people teach. Take that time to develop your own sense of teaching and your own sense of error detection. That's the thing you're going to struggle with the most when you first start, is you're going to go, something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong. And figure out how to diagnose that. I remember when I was in college, Dr. Tutt here at Grand Valley told us, when you're in rehearsal, you should be sitting here watching the conductor, and every time they cut off, you need to be trying to figure out why they cut off. And that's a really valuable thing. If you can start to train that error detection so that you can know what's wrong, it's going to help you to be more successful that first year of teaching. But just expect the unexpected and enjoy the ride, because it's wonderful and terrifying and hilarious and sad all at the same time.
Yeah. Rehearsals with Dr. Kevin Tutt. I learned so much from that man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I remember just kind of going back to the question about advice that they gave you. Just something that stuck with me from him is, like, in order for you to get good at the profession, it has to be fun first. Like, you can't, what we do is like an art. Like, just have to have fun with it and feel free to make those mistakes, and then in rehearsal figure out, oh, like, this is why we're doing this, or, oh, this is why I need to work on this.
And don't take it too seriously, and don't take yourself seriously.
Yeah.
That's a really big one.
Going back to like teaching and stuff, have you found a favorite rehearsal strategy that you've used, or an activity that you found really connects with your students?
That all depends on where we're at in the rehearsal cycle and what we're doing. The way I rehearse Jazz 1 is completely different from how I rehearse our symphony band, which is completely different from how I rehearse our marching band. It just depends on where we're at in the process and what's going to work best for those kids. I do find for concert rehearsals, silent rehearsals are some of my all-time favorite. I'm an absolute ham bone. Like I make a complete and utter fool of myself on the podium. But what I've found is by not talking, it really has nothing to do with what I'm trying to convey by dancing and gestures and writing on the board and whatever other random things I do. It forces the students to start to listen to each other and to start to try and fix things and figure out okay, so he says something's wrong. I don't know what the crazy guy on the podium's saying. What do we need to do to fix it? And then they start to fix themselves.
So kind of going off of that, what is the hardest part you find about teaching music? Whether that be a aspect of music itself, time, rhythm, intonation, tuning, or what do you think that younger musicians struggle with the most when it comes to that sort of big picture music aspect?
I think that with younger musicians, it's the concept of doing everything all at once that can be very tricky for them. And I'm thinking specifically my middle schoolers right now. They can get really good at identifying notes. They can get really good at knowing what fingers to put down. Trying to get them to do these two things at the same time can be really, really challenging. And that can take a really long time to get them comfortable enough to be able to go, oh, second space, that's an A, fingers 1 and 2 go down. Got it. That seems to be quite a struggle. And it's really important at that age group to scaffold everything so you get one skill and you build it up and you build it up and you build it up and you build it up. And by the end of the year, they can do the thing. But early in the year, if you were to try and, let's take all the method books, right? If you put a method book in front of a kid and it says, first note is, I'm thinking saxophone right now, G, 1, 2, 3. And then it puts whole notes out there. And these poor kids have to try and figure out their embouchure, look at how to put their fingers down, get the fingers in the right place, create the right air, and know the right duration all at once. If you're a young teacher and you walk in and try to use that book as day one, it's not going to work. We've gotten to the point now, I don't open the method book until late November, early December, because there's so much that they just have to learn the executive skills and isolate things before you put them together.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know me and a colleague at Grand Valley have talked about it before, but it's interesting that we teach music this way, where we have the method book with just like the words on it, rather than like the notes on it, rather than teaching them sort of how to speak in the language first, where it's you read it and then you put sound to it rather than starting with the sound and going from there.
Right.
And I find that even in upper level music, even like graduate, postgraduate, undergrad, that's still something that everyone struggles with. And it's something that people just kind of need to figure out at some point. It's like not figure out, but just sort of go down that rabbit hole and know, oh, well, I need to put the sound first. The sound is the most important thing.
Well, from a neuroscience perspective, the language centers of our brain are mirrored in the music centers. Like we use the same pathways in our brain to learn music as we do to learn language, which is why studying music at a young age can actually improve your ability to process language.
Yeah.
And our elementary colleagues, they get this right. They know you don't look at notation until 3rd, 4th grade, but you're singing, you're dancing, you're moving. And for whatever reason in the band side of things, sometimes we lose sight of that. And I think a lot of it is, it's the sheer challenge of it, right? I'm lucky. We split into brass and woodwinds and percussion. I don't have to teach everyone all together all at once. But let's say you're a small town band director and you have 45 kids in front of you on a variety of instruments and you have to teach them all at once because that's the only thing that happens in your school. The method book is a fallback to be able to find a way to do that. It's not ideal and it can be really, really challenging. I'm lucky enough that I just teach flute, clarinet, and saxophone. I don't have the brass kids in my class. I don't have the percussionists in my class. So I can focus on woodwind-specific pedagogy. But even then, it's so tricky because starting flute is a completely and totally different experience than starting clarinet and saxophone. So I think that's a lot of where that comes from, but you're absolutely right that we need to learn the language of it and learn to speak it, and then you can figure out the notation. And I found as I've taught that way, I've taught students to play the instrument, to move their fingers, I have woodwind players who by December are playing 1-octave chromatic scales. And they don't even think anything about it. It's fine. They play that, they'll play 4 or 5 different major scales. If I were to put the notation in front of them, they'd look at me like I'm crazy. Yeah. But we figure out how to move the fingers, and then later in the year we go, oh yeah, you've been doing this. And then I just put music in front of them and they start reading and they can actually process it instead of having to go through and teach it. So that's what I found has worked for me, at least with the little ones.
So moving forward to more of like the high school aspect, how do you feel about like bit of like competition in the classroom? Do you think it's more productive? Is it more damaging? How do you sit on this?
Yeah, that is a loaded question in this profession. And I have a differing view on this than a lot of my colleagues in our region. I am not a fan of competitive marching band. And I'll kind of get into the reasons why in a second. Competition in the classroom is good as long as it's managed appropriately. I am always pushing my students to compete against themselves. Not with like first chair against second chair, but to compete with your own standard. You know, if this is where you want to be, that I challenge you to raise that, to hold yourself to a higher level. And that's how groups get better. You know, when you say, this is the goal and we're going to work towards that goal, that type of competition is really, really healthy. And I think really, really important. With middle school, a friendly competition of brass versus woodwind for whatever it may end up being can get the kids to really put in the time into work and to practice. That to me is a really effective form of competition. And for some programs, the competitive marching band is highly successful and fits their community and is really important to them. And that's fantastic. It was at one point important to the community I teach in. We were an MCBA band. We have 7 or 8 state titles that we've won. We were competing with the Jennisons and Reese Puffers and Plymouth Cantons and all of the, you know, big competitive schools here in Michigan. And my colleague, our head director, kind of came to the conclusion that to win, you have to rehearse way more than our students are able to. You know, my students are blue collar mostly. They have to work. They have jobs. They're also involved in a lot of other things. I have probably 20 to 30 student athletes just who are in fall sports who are also in marching band. I have football players, I have cheerleaders, I have cross country, soccer, volleyball, you name it, that are in our group. So for the culture that we want, it doesn't fit. And we would rather take the money that we would spend on that and bring in great clinicians, bring in great instructors, commission new music. I've been at the high school, this will be my 8th year now. We've commissioned 20 pieces or been in consortiums. I mean, we're constantly commissioning pieces. And that's just where we've chose to put our financial interest and to kind of put our focus is on concert season and on new music. And for some schools, what competitive marching band does is fantastic. It's just, for me personally, it's never quite been the right fit. But I also grew up in a non-competitive school, and I found a lot of times people who grow up in non-competitive schools tend to not like competitive marching band. People who grew up in competitive marching band schools tend to like it. And that is just what it is.
If I may, kind of going off of that a little bit, in terms of competition, how do you feel about competition when it comes to chair placement for your ensembles? That sort of more concert band styled competition.
Well, let me ask you this. If I were a math teacher and I posted the grades of every single student in order by their name, how would that look?
Not very good.
I'd be fired.
Yeah.
My principal would haul me into the office and say, you're violating FERPA. I mean, what are you doing? That's what we do with chair placements. So we don't have chairs. What we do is we audition within our groups. So you're placed into wind ensemble or symphony band, or hopefully here soon, wind ensemble, symphony band, and concert band. And then we do part placements. So you're placed on either first, second, or third part, depending on how many parts your section has. Within that, there's no determination as to who is who, with the exception that we do pick a principal player for the section. And in larger sections, usually clarinet and trumpet, I will pick a principal second and a principal third. That way, if we have to go down to one on a part, I can just say one on a part, and those people know that that's their job. Those people also are in charge of organizing sectionals. So let's say we're in the middle of rehearsal and I get to a section and it's, a hot mess express. I can look at my principal clarinetist and go, you need to have a sectional on this by next Thursday. And they pull the group and they take care of it. So we have that for leadership purposes. But as far as your first, second, third, fourth, we don't do that. With our top group, we rotate parts all the time. So like our trumpet section, you might play first on one tune. Next song, you're playing second. Next song, you're on third. But with those students, we can do that. With the second group, I don't do that because typically my second and third trumpets struggle getting the higher range that you need to have for first trumpet parts. And in my clarinets, my younger students, going over the break still scares them. And first parts need to be fluent going up and down over that break in the grade 3 repertoire.
And that's also good for the students, because then you have these trumpet players who sit on third trumpet for their whole life, or these clarinet players who sit on second and third clarinet for their whole life. And even those parts can be challenging. And if they never play some of those higher parts, it's going to be really hard for them. Like just thinking about the clarinet parts in Lincolnshire, those inner clarinet parts are brutal compared to the first clarinet part. And if you have these second and third clarinet parts who have never played anything like that before, it's going to be really challenging for them.
Absolutely. And what we do to kind of counteract that, I take all the clarinets over the break in 6th grade. Usually we'll go over the break in November. Once they get their fingers sealed, like, all right, just press the button. We just start doing jumps to get used to it. And then, in middle school, we're playing scales over the break to try and get used to that. But with marching band, we structure it, parts are assigned by age. So when you're a freshman, you're on third. As you move up in age, you get to second, and then most of our seniors are on first. So all of our kids, as they get older, get more experience playing that higher register to get them ready for those parts. And even in grade 3 rep, you're going up and down over the break. You're just not going up and down quite as much on the third part as you are on the first part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know, going back a little bit, I know we were talking about holding students to a higher standard and things like that. How do you balance holding those students to a higher standard while also making band a fun and welcoming place?
So I think there's a couple ways to approach that. The first is kids like being good. They like feeling accomplished. They like feeling like they can play challenging things. So when you can get, once the group have the technical abilities to do that, it's pretty easy to use the music as the motivation to kind of build that, to go, look, isn't it fun to be able to play this? We can play this really tricky piece, or we're playing this piece that colleges play. When we played Lincolnshire with our top group, we had them working through that, and it gives them that experience. But it all comes down to culture and to relationships. The old adage of kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. I am 100% believer in that. And I spend a significant amount of my time building relationships with those students so that the day comes that I need to push them, I have years and years of history building them up so I can kind of go, hey, this has to stop now. And that to me is really, really important. And it's more important that the kids love music than anything. That's what we want them to enjoy. I love nothing more than seeing graduates going into school for music, but also who just keep playing, who keep their instruments and they find ensembles to play in and to be a part of things. I have a former student who was a fantastic bassoonist after she was also a trumpet player and a flute player and whatever other instrument she happened to take home that week, who is going into the medical field, but still plays to this day and is the drum major of the marching band here at Grand Valley. And that to me is what it's about, that we have those kids who want to continue. And that all starts by building that relationship with them and just encouraging them.
Yeah, no, that's great. And when it comes to these students, how do you define success for them and for yourself as an educator?
So success, it varies from kid to kid. For some kids, it's making the top group. For some kids, it's showing up to school and making it through the day. And you have to know the kids to know which one they're at, to know which space they're in at that moment. For me, for success, it's not ratings based. It's not, did I get a 1, 2, or a 3? I really don't care. It's, are the kids better when we get to the end of the process than when we started the process? If the kids sound better and they have better skills, then that's success. Do they feel good about their performance? Were they able to perform appropriate level literature to a successful mark? And if they get there, that's success. For me, in the eyes of the program, and I work very closely with my 2 colleagues on this, it's performing appropriate literature, but putting our group out there, playing at the Michigan Music Conference. Last year, we took our wind ensemble to Midwest we were the demo group for the rehearsal lab. It's, taking the jazz band to all these different jazz festivals, taking our marching band to universities to work with different professors there to learn things, providing experiences. And if we have these students who leave with positive experiences, then our program was successful. If we're able to play high-level music at a high level along the way, that's just icing on the cake.
So as you look at all the things you have to do within the year with marching band, concert band, jazz band, how do you keep a well-balanced program while, effectively teaching and giving a good experience with all those bands?
Yeah. So we run, at the high school, we have 2 concert bands, a marching band, a basketball and hockey pep band, 2 jazz bands, a steel drum ensemble, and a drum line. So, and that's just the high school. The middle school, we have advanced band, intermediate band, 6th grade band, 2 different jazz bands, and a middle school drum line as well. Each thing has its season. And again, I'm not an island. I have 2 phenomenal colleagues who I work with and a pretty significant staff that we hire to help run some of those different groups. We could not do it all by ourselves. Like, for me personally, I have the second band. I oversee the basketball pep band, but I don't direct it. I kind of do the administrative work, and we hire someone to run it at games. I run the top jazz band. I assist with the 8th grade band. I run 6th grade woodwinds, and I co-run the 8th grade drum line. And each thing kind of has its different time of the year where it has to be the priority. Right now, it's marching band. That is, we're trying to get the show up off the ground, get everything going. That is all hands on deck, focused there. Next week, we start to shift to the beginners. We have to get them up and running and kind of establish the basics. And for the first 3 weeks of school, those 6th graders are focus number 1, because what we do in those first 3 to 4 weeks sets the standard for the rest of their time in the program. Then jazz band starts up, and it's all just, it kind of keeps rolling. There's a progression throughout the year. But it comes down to organization too. You have to know what's coming next. I have Gmail. On the right side has a little thing that looks like a check mark. And if you click that, it opens a to-do list that you can populate and have open on your Gmail at all times. And any device you open your Gmail on, that to-do list populates. That is my life. If I didn't have that to-do list and my calendar, I wouldn't know what's happening next, because, there's so many things going. You'll kind of be in the middle doing something, go, oh, I have to do that. Case in point, last night, we're sitting down by the channel in Grand Haven just relaxing, and we're talking about homecoming at another school. And I went, oh no, homecoming's the second week of school. I need to get alumni band running. So I pull up my phone, type that in, and now I have that to know that I have to work on that next time. But it's really about dividing the labor so everybody carries their weight, knowing what you have to do when, and being okay with having to-do lists, because if you don't write it down, there's so much going on, you're never going to remember it. And I even have to tell my students sometimes, I'll be writing something down, they'll come in with someone's problem, and I'll have to turn to them and go, stop, give me 30 seconds. Okay, now you have my full attention. But it's a challenge at times. There are certainly times of the year where I'm not home any night of the week. Leading into our fall break, I will have AJO rehearsal Monday, District Marching Band Festival Tuesday. Wednesday, we're taking the band to Grand Ledge, staying the night, going up to CMU, bringing them back. I'll get back, have to stay for parent-teacher conferences. And we don't have a football game that Friday this year, so I actually get to go home Friday night. And that's this job.
So when you give the kids the chance to perform, it's concert season. How do you kind of program your concerts? Like, do you have like a overall theme that you kind of go for, or does each ensemble kind of have their own specific like idea that they're going with? Or
our approach is music we like.
Okay.
And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but when you're programming, picking a marching band show, picking jazz music, it doesn't matter what it is. You have to live with that music forever. From score study to rehearsal to performance, the first thing is you have to be willing to listen to that music every day for months on end. And if you don't like the music, you're not going to want to rehearse it. You're not going to rehearse it well, and it's not going to sound good. Case in point, Persichetti's Divertimento for band. It's a piece of music that has a lot of great things to teach in it. It's a standard that a lot of people play. I despise it. I just don't like how it sounds. I played it in high school, or maybe it was late middle school. I can't remember. And I remember just it being pounded in the head with da 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 over and over. And I can't stand the piece. I can't teach that piece because I don't enjoy it. So that's to me the number one criteria. Can I stand listening to this that long? Because if you don't enjoy teaching it, it's not going to come off well. Then is it appropriate for the group? And I'm not someone who really, I don't do themes. We will sometimes try to like match composers. So let's say the top group's doing Dvorak Fanfare by Jack Stamp. I might do Cenotaph by Jack Stamp with the second group so that, everyone's kind of experimenting the same composers and their styles. But we don't do, all right, this theme is a autumn theme concert. Everything must have to do with leaves. That's just not my thing. With concert band, I know there are some people out there who say you have to play a march on every concert. I'm not one of those. Thank you, Kevin Tutt. I really appreciate you teaching me that. I'm much more a fanfare and, that type of entrance for the beginning of concerts. So I always try to have, a variety of music. You want to have a lyrical piece. You want to have, contrasting movements to keep interest there. So I really focus on that. One thing I'm really passionate about is that my students need to play music by people who aren't old dead white guys or old living white guys. So I always try to have every performance has at least one piece of music that's written by a diverse composer. Every once in a while, it doesn't happen. Like I think I have one program this next year that isn't quite there, but I might try to squeeze a fourth piece in so we can do that. That's something that I know is really important. I remember it was something I always just did. And one day I stopped and I actually explained to my class that I did that. And my entire band of 85 stood up and applauded. And that kind of taught me, okay, this is really important to them. This really matters. So I spend a lot of time trying to find music by female composers, LGBTQIA plus composers, Black composers, other racial background composers, and make sure that not only am I just picking that music because of their background, but also picking music that's absolutely phenomenal by composers with different backgrounds. And I think that's really, really important. So that's kind of the big thing I do. Obviously with marching band, there's always a theme. That's a different type of thing. With jazz, I'm always trying to program, do we have a swing? Do we have a ballad? And do we have something else? Usually Latin, but sometimes rock, sometimes, a shuffle, sometimes funk. It just depends on the program.
Are there specific pieces that you constantly recycle, like on a year-to-year basis?
There's a handful of them. I try never to do the same piece within a student's time in school. So like if I do a piece, I wait 4 years until they've graduated so that before I do it again. I also will only do, and this rule is more just to keep myself looking for music. I will only do one piece by a composer in a year. I love my middle school colleague to death, but I tease her all the time because 3/4 of what she plays is Randall Standridge. And don't get me wrong, for the level that she's working with, it's fantastic. Like, it works. But at the high school level, I can find a little more variety. So I always hold myself that only one piece by each composer per year. But within that, there are a couple that I recycle. For my group plays grade 3 to low grade 4. Grade 3 is kind of our bread and butter right now. We're pushing up towards grade 4. But Flourish for Wind Band by Vaughan Williams is a piece that I think every kid needs to play. It's just great music. Courtly Airs and Dances by Ron Nelson is one that I like to do regularly. There's a piece by a composer named Kimberly Archer called Awakenings that is, I absolutely love that piece. It's based on the octatonic scale, and she has 2 different octatonic scales she uses throughout the piece. So it sounds like Batman, but that's the best description I could get when my kids told me that. But it's really, really, really well written. I believe John Martin did that piece with either concert band or university band here a couple years ago. That's one that, I typically do every 4 years or so. Those are the ones that really stick out. I really try hard to just find new music because I don't want to get stuck in the doldrums of I have these 15 pieces that get me through every 4 years and I just do them over and over. I like finding new stuff because it helps me to become a better musician. I guess the other one I just thought of is the Bach Fantasia and Prelude in B-flat major. It's Bach. Enough said.
Always got to have Bach in there.
That or the Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor. Those are I think I played both of those in high school. Those were fun.
Yeah, the Passacaglia, if I remember correctly, is a little bit harder. That would be more of our top group.
Yeah. It's fun.
Or any of his preludes. Or I mean, the Fantasias. Oh, those are so much fun to play.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about sort of what you do in the classroom. And outside of the classroom, you do a lot as well with music. I was wondering how, we kind of talked about this a little bit. You keep yourself organized using this journal, using this Gmail system. Can you go a little bit more into that? Can you explain sort of the process of keeping yourself organized with not just school stuff, but outside of school stuff, AJO, teaching at GVSU, all these things? How do you stay on top of all of that?
Calendars.
Yeah.
Calendars. I have my school calendar, my Grand Valley calendar. We have a separate AJO calendar, and they're all Google calendars that are on my phone. So I can pick up my phone, and I know this for the listeners, this doesn't really help, but I can pull up any month between now and forever. Here's my September.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very full for those listening.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that's our entire high school performing arts calendar. So some of those things I'm not necessarily doing, but most of them I am.
Yeah.
And that I wake up and usually I check my calendar as I'm getting ready every morning, go, okay, what do I have today? On Sunday, I sit down and I look at my calendar, go, what do I have this week? And kind of plan out each week like that. And then the to-do list is just all of the, I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this stuff that happens in between. You know, the actual teaching, I don't want to say that's the easy part because it's not easy, but that's the fun part, you know. The organization and the keeping on top of the ridiculous number of things that happen, that's the challenge. Also, I don't do well when I'm not busy, so I just fill my schedule so I can keep myself entertained.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a story that my professor, Timothy Northcutt, loves to share about Harvey Phillips, who is kind of the grandfather of the tuba and sort of our first guy who did it, you know. And he used to keep a physical calendar and a physical planner, not just for the current year, but for the next 2 years. So if you had to book Harvey Phillips for your event, say Midwest or a low brass seminar, you had to get to him and then tell him 2 years from now, because he had the next 2 years already all filled up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And with teaching, you know that the second week of October every year is going to be District Marching Band Festival. And whatever day that is, you're not available. And every once in a while, you commit the travesty of double booking yourself, and you have to kind of navigate your way out of that. But it happens, and, you know.
And then all your friends want to
life.
have October weddings, and I can't go. I've got to be at Ford Field.
My best friend tried to do an October wedding. He was a teacher. I was I was the best man. He wanted to do it in October in Washington. And I just looked at him like, dude, you know what I do for a living, right?
Oh, man.
But then again, I always tell myself, the next season's going to be less busy. No, it's not.
No.
That's a lie.
Sort of Sisyphus pushing your boulder uphill.
It never ends. It never, ever ends. But, when you enjoy doing it, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I say is, I work really, really, really hard. But when it's time to play, I play really, really hard. Like in the summer, I make a point to every weekend I possibly can. I'm up north sitting on a pontoon boat, relaxing, using that time to recharge and to refill the tank so that when I do get to those times where I have to go, I have the battery to be able to get through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sort of going now into the practice room outside of your classroom, how has your own playing changed since becoming a full-time teacher? Because I know that you're a pretty good alto saxophone player and soprano saxophone player, jazz, classical. Mm-hmm. How do you find that your teaching of students influences your own playing?
It's a really interesting question. First off, I don't practice nearly as often as I did in college. I miss having that time to devote to playing my instrument. I really miss that. Truth be told, most of my gigs now, I just sit down and I read. But when you're playing jazz gigs, they're sight reading gigs. And you walk in, they put the book in front of you and they say, go. And you go, okay. I have found that through teaching people how to improvise, I have become a far better improviser than I was before. And that's not by actually taking the time to woodshed parts or to learn something out of the Omni book. I mean, I'm not saying those aren't good things to do. You need to do those. Those are important. But just thinking through how you learned something has really helped me to reshape how I phrase things. And I think in terms of jazz, life experience teaches you a lot. And, there's a reason most of the best jazz musicians had pretty tough lives. That comes out in their playing. And I think that is, the experiences that I've had have definitely helped to shape that. But I think that's the biggest way it's affected my playing. I have to be a lot more efficient when I'm learning things. And I don't get the time to do that very often. But every once in a while, I pull out the horn and play in front of the kids. And it's fun just to keep that going. I try my best to play whenever I can. But it's tough, there's only so many hours in the day and you have to kind of prioritize, and you need to make sure you take time to actually relax. Otherwise you're going to burn out.
Yeah. Kind of just, it's the quality of the practice, not the quantity of it.
Yes.
That's a lesson I've been trying to realize in grad school as well, where kind of the first week we hit the ground running with a lot of big programs, and it was everyone wanted to just practice, and everyone wanted to have a room all day long and work on whatever excerpt or whatever piece of music they were playing, whatever solo they were doing. And so many of my colleagues love to sit in a room and bash their head against the wall, playing Stars and Stripes Forever and all these things over and over again. And I find that now that I'm getting a little bit older than I was when I left Grand Valley, it's a lot easier for me to sit down and do 2 or 4 measures and really break them apart and really focus on them, and then pack up, come back later, do something else, and just really have a good quality practice session for 20 minutes than quantity for an hour.
Absolutely. And I think, when you're on the podium every day and you're essentially, I view rehearsal with a large group as practice. I'm teaching a group that, as much as I would love them to be in the practice room learning their parts individually, some of them will. My top kids will. The younger ones, or the kids who are in band because their girlfriend's in band, or because mom said they had to, or for whatever, they like band camp, they want to go to Hawaii, whatever it might be, you have to practice for them at times. And it's that discipline of breaking down 2 to 4 measures. And when you're doing that all day, every day, that ingrains into you too in your own practice.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. I want to know if there's a musical moment from teaching at Mona Shores, directing at Mona Shores, marching band, concert band, AJO, your own personal playing. Is there a performance? Is there a moment that sticks out to you more than anything, of just being sort of a crown jewel in your career so far?
Yeah. And interestingly enough, they're not the big prestigious performances. I mean, I got to conduct in DeVos Hall at the Michigan Music Conference, and that was amazing, but that's not one of them. There's 2 of them that really stick out to me. So with my job, I started off teaching elementary, and then I moved to secondary, and I moved with these kids. So I've had some of my students, my current senior class, I've taught them since they were first graders. My current juniors, I've taught them since they were kindergartners. I've known these kids forever. And when I first came to Mona Shores, my very first concert with the choir, we did an arrangement of Shenandoah. And it was beautiful, really well written, just a vocal elementary choir piece. Fast forward when those kids who were in 5th grade were seniors. And that group they were the freshmen when I moved to the high school. And for our final concert, we do a concert called the American Salute Concert, which we do in conjunction with some of the veteran groups in Muskegon, and we do it at the Frauenthal Theater, which, if you haven't seen the Frauenthal in Muskegon, it's stunning. It's probably, in my opinion, the most beautiful auditorium in West Michigan. And we decided to do Omar Thomas's Shenandoah, which on its own is a incredible piece of music. But I'm up there conducting through it, and all of a sudden I caught the eye of 2 students, one who's now at CMU and one who is the drum major that I was telling you all about earlier. And they had both been in that 5th grade choir all those years ago with me. We started with Shenandoah, and our last performance together was Shenandoah. And I locked eyes with them, and we all just started bawling. the three of us started and then people around, and it was one of the most emotional performances I've ever had. So that definitely sticks out to me. The other one is a piece that I tell people I only have a couple more in me. Like, I can't do this piece that often because it just, every time I do it, it takes a part of my heart, just wrenches it out. And it all started when I was here at Grand Valley. And Mike, you may know the story I'm about to tell. I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Kevin Tutt, who, we all know here, a phenomenal educator. He was the director of the concert band. And he was in a really terrible car accident. And he came back and was in a full neck brace or like a body brace. He couldn't turn his head. He kind of rotated like this. And we had to set the band up in straight rows. And we just kept going. Like, he came back. He took everything else off except for concert band. He would not give us up. And we were doing Elsa's Procession to the Cathedral, which is already, it's Elsa's. Like, it's one of the most stunning pieces I've ever heard. And we get to the dress rehearsal, and he runs out of the room crying. And I just remember sitting there going, what on earth? Like, that doesn't happen. And we got to the performance that night, and we get into the piece, and he just starts bawling. And every single one of us, just tears. It was one of those moments. Everybody was crying. And it was an amazing performance. A couple weeks later, I was walking down the hallway, and he bumped into me, and we were talking. I said, Dr. Tutt, what happened? And he said, well, when I got hit, when I was in the car accident, my wife was right behind me. She saw the whole thing. And my wife walked down the aisle to Elsa's Procession, and she was in the audience that night as we performed it. I remember that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And that was maybe 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. Fast forward to 2014. My wife walked down the aisle to Elsa's Procession to the Cathedral, and we got married in a church in Traverse City that has this it is our family church. We both of our families grew up going there. It has this amazing organ. And the organist was the organ instructor at Interlochen. So he could play. And the building was shaking, and I watched her walk down to that. And that piece it hit me even harder at that point. So then a couple of years ago, this was maybe 22, we had just been through one of the most awful experiences imaginable. Teaching during the pandemic, trying to somehow keep things afloat and not lose our program. And we did. It was really hard, but we did. We were successful. I decided, every year I do a piece with the top group, and my colleague does a piece with my group. We do that just to make sure we're still keeping connection with the students. I decided I was going to do Elsa's. And at that point, a lot of those kids who'd been elementary kids were in that group. And I as we were rehearsing, I didn't tell the story. I kept it all to myself, because if I opened that can of worms, so to speak, I knew I couldn't put it back. And I think it was a rehearsal or two before, I told them all these stories. I told them the Dr. Tutt story and about walking down the aisle. And I don't know what happened. Those kids just lit on fire when we performed. And it was the same thing. I started crying. I remember looking over at one of my students, who now plays in AJO, who I've known for a long time. And he started crying, and I was gone. And the entire band just wept the entire way through the end of that piece. And I will never forget how that sounded. And the audience just exploded. And that is one that will sit with me for a long time. The only other one I can think of is we did a piece called Our Castaways by Julie Garou, which is about abandoned pets and lost pets. And it's beautiful music. And I had all of my students send me pictures of their rescue animals. And I made a slideshow. And I played that slideshow while we were performing. And I'm pretty sure the audience started crying before any of the kids did. I talked to people in the audience afterwards, and they said there wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. And of course, I had to end with a picture of my puppy. So,
Yeah.
Wow. All right. That impactful story. Now I'm going to move on to more of a question that I really want answered. Moving into teaching and all that, being a college student, what is one thing that you wish you told yourself that was in college as you went into your teaching career?
The most important class you are going to take is oral skills, ear training. I get why it's put where it's put in the sequence. You don't realize how important that class is. That class teaches you how to do the job. And if I could go back in time, I would tell myself to stop messing around and listen to Dr. Norris. It probably would have made things a lot easier, especially at RL3. I would say soak up everything you can and savor this time, because this is when you actually get to focus on your musicianship. The minute you step into that classroom, it's not about you anymore. Right now, when you're a student, it's about you. It's about getting the skills you need and the time you need and the mentorship you need. But the minute you walk in that classroom, it's about them. And they have to come before everything else. So take this time right now to really build yourself up and build that musicianship so that when you walk into that classroom, you're ready. And know that it's going to be a ton of fun and you're going to feel frustrated and upset and happy and sad and all the things. But it is worth it. At the end of the day, it is worth it.
What is one part of teaching, like, obviously you're on the podium directing. What is a job that we as a general public don't see, behind the scenes kind of thing?
My colleagues and I joke that we have advanced degrees in chairs and stands. We schlep equipment all the time. Building seating charts, setting up chairs, tearing down chairs, moving stands, setting up for marching band, moving instruments from building to building. Instrument inventory. I manage 260 or so wind instruments and 2 schools worth of percussion inventory. Facilities, putting in the requests to make sure you can be in the places you need to be when you need to be in them. Emails, all the emails. I guarantee you in the time I've been here, we've been sitting down for about an hour now. I probably have 15 school emails. Let's just see how close I am here. Oh, only 3. That can't be right. I mean, the emails are constantly coming in. It's summer, so I guess my parents are being nice to me.
They're all in meetings
And
right now.
Dealing with families and family dynamics in student situations. And, no one sees the sitting there with a kid in tears because their grandmother just died, or the kid who comes to you and says, I don't have food at home, help.
Yeah.
Nobody sees that part. And that takes up a significant amount of time. I mean, we have food in our offices at all time for kids who need them. We even have a drawer of feminine hygiene products for if a kid is in a pinch, they know that they can come get something and they can take care of what they need to take care of. Stuff like that happens all the time. And that's where you really earn your pay.
Yeah. I remember back in my high school, we always had like a little cabinet just full of snacks and, whatever you need. And it was really nice and really nice to have that. As we're ending this episode a little bit, I have a couple more questions. I know here at the Performing Arts Center, a bunch of us music kids, we do outside things and like we do pickleball and just to kind of get away from the music. What kind of hobbies do you have outside of music that just kind of give you a place to recharge or give you some space away from the music?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, in the summer we're always boating. Anytime we can be on the water. I grew up in Traverse City. I'm a water person. So boating, kayaking, getting outside, going for walks. I absolutely love to cook. Any chance I can to get in the kitchen and just play around, I will. I'm a volunteer scuba diver at John Ball Zoo. So I go in, and I've been doing that for 12 years now. Clean tanks, feed sharks, fix things, whatever needs to happen underwater because they can't get to it. I do that a couple times a week in the summer and 2 or 3 times a month in the winter. And then I also breed tropical fish and propagate corals. So I have a 160-gallon coral system at home.
Wow.
Where I have all kinds of different stuff that I play around with. So
That's
I
so
have
cool.
a lot of things outside of work.
I got to step up my game.
That is so cool.
I also don't have kids though, so that does help.
Right.
Well, you have that dog.
I do have that dog. That is true. He thinks he's a human.
What's the dog's name?
His name's Humphrey. He's a Shih Tzu.
Nice. All right. I've got 2 more questions for you. The first one being, what's one piece of advice you want students to take away from this episode, or just in general? And the second is, are there any books or resources you would recommend to students?
So for high school students, that one's easy. You matter. You're important. You're loved. I tell my kids that at the end of every rehearsal, every single day. For college students, I would say that too. But know that it's worth it. It's so easy when you're sitting in a practice room slaving over a concerto or trying to remember the alternate fingering for B flat on clarinet to just go, why on earth am I doing this? Know that it's worth it. This job is hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's really, really challenging. But it is so worth it to watch these kids succeed and to watch them go on in life and to be able to do incredible things, whether it's in music or not, and to, have a small part in that. I have a student who just started at a university and as a music major. And I do this thing with my kids where I write a Post-it note. And I just write a little message to them and I stick it on their stand. And I try to get to every kid in my ensemble throughout the year. She just emailed me saying, I'm moving out of my house and moving into my dorm room. And I took all 4 notes you gave me and I have them framed to hang in my room. And that's just one of those reminders, like, it matters. What you do as a teacher makes a huge, huge difference. And, to the music ed students, just keep going. We need teachers. There's not enough of them right now. And we need great teachers. Our future students need great teachers. So just keep going. You're going to get through it and it's worth it.
Yeah. And do you have any resources or?
The biggest resources I rely on are my community. And I would say, go to Midwest. Get to Midwest. That will change your perspective on so many things and be so inspiring. There's not really a list of resources, I guess, that come to my mind. I mean, there's certainly like in discipline-specific things. But I would just say, get out there and experience things and build a network and meet people. Mm-hmm. And you're going to learn more from the people you meet than from a textbook any day.
Oh, yeah. Totally agree. Well, that's going to wrap up today's guest episode. I want to thank all of you so much for being here. It means so much. If you or someone you know would like to be featured on Tutti Talks, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram at Tutti Talks Podcast or email us at tuttitalkspodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to follow us on all our socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with guest highlights, behind-the-scenes content, and performance clips. We're passionate about connecting with as many musicians as possible, and your support makes that possible. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a fellow musician, colleague, or friend, whether it's someone in your ensemble, your studio, or someone who would appreciate these conversations. Every share helps grow our community. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Tutti Talks. Keep the music playing, keep the conversation going, and we will see you in the next one.